Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Jack's favor, Kyle's confession, and Audra's loss. Michael Mealer's character Kyle Abbott confesses to Haley Erin's character Claire Grace Newman. In addition, Melody Thomas Scott's character Nikki Newman asks Peter Bergman's character Jack Abbott for a favor. Let's discuss the upcoming events in the CBS soap opera as you continue reading. Nikki Newman's particular request. First, let's talk with Nikki, who will be worried by her altercation with Victor. It naturally revolves around Victor pushing Claire away in an effort to reveal the truth about Kyle. But on the day of Cole Howard's memorial ceremony, Claire stormed out as a result of all his hard work. Instead of making her and Kyle further distant, this will only make them closer. Nikki will turn to Jack anyhow. The blonde is going to request a favor from her longtime pal. Jack feels Claire is perfect for Kyle and loves her. Thus, it is likely that he will answer yes. Kyle Abbott admits. Claire needs to know something now that she has made the decision to live with Kyle following her altercation with Victor. Kyle can't let Claire, especially Audra, find out from someone else. Kyle then admits what transpired in Nice. Naturally, Kyle will pretend that he was the one playing Audra and that he knew what she was up to the entire time. For the time being, Claire is likely to believe him. Claire later confronts Audra. The loss of Audra Charles. According to Wednesday, August 6 spoilers for The Young and the Restless, Audra will lose. Victor cancels their agreement, even though she insists that everything is proceeding as planned. Victor can no longer employ Audra at this time because Claire left and the plan didn't work out. How long before her little seduction plot is discovered by Nate Hastings? Victoria Newman torn. When it came to Victor, she sided with Claire and Victoria Newman. She has, nevertheless, also always been her father's favorite child. Victoria is frequently split between her father and another person. But this time it's her daughter, not a friend or a lover. Victoria might have to take some risky actions to maintain harmony among the family as a result. In the aftermath of Cole Howard's heartfelt memorial service, emotions ran high and the Abbott and Newman families were left to pick up the pieces of fractured trust, broken expectations, and unexpected bonds. Nikki Newman, still reeling from the way Victor forced a wedge between Claire and Kyle, found herself questioning her husband's motives more deeply than she had in years. Claire Grace Newman, beautifully portrayed by Haley Erin, had been growing into a confident, self-assured woman, having fought through trauma, prison, and social scrutiny, only to be met with her grandfather's harsh, calculated move to destroy her happiness. Claire had been led to believe that Victor's interest in protecting her was sincere, but the confrontation she had with him at the memorial left her shattered and, more importantly, angry. It wasn't just Victor's words, but the intention behind them that hurt most. He wanted to expose Kyle, not to help her, but to control her. What Victor hadn't counted on was how deeply Claire and Kyle had bonded, or how fiercely she would react to what she perceived as betrayal. She stormed out of the Newman ranch in tears, not back to her mother Victoria, but straight to the man who had, against all odds, become her peace, Kyle Abbott. Meanwhile, Nikki Newman, long the family's emotional compass and the silent bridge between Victor's aggression and the rest of the clan's sanity, made a bold move. Knowing Victor wouldn't budge and that Claire needed protection and support, Nikki did something unexpected. She reached out to Jack Abbott. The tension between Victor and Jack was well known in Genoa City, but Nikki knew Jack's heart. She knew he had always had a soft spot for her and a sense of decency that Victor often lacked when it came to emotional nuance. Jack had already grown fond of Claire and had told Ashley more than once that Claire reminded him of a young version of Nikki, ambitious, wounded, loyal. When Nikki approached Jack at society later that evening, she didn't try to hide her anxiety. "I need your help," she admitted, her voice trembling ever so slightly. Jack immediately assumed something had happened with Victor again and braced himself. But instead, Nikki surprised him by asking for a favor involving Claire and Kyle. "I want you to help protect them," she said. Jack's eyebrows lifted. Nikki elaborated she needed Jack to offer support for Claire and Kyle's relationship, to publicly align himself with them so Victor would back off. "You've seen how he gets," she added. "And right now, Claire doesn't need her grandfather trying to manipulate her life. She needs family who will stand beside her. Kyle does too." Jack, caught between his loyalty to his son and his history with Nikki, nodded. Claire is good for Kyle, he agreed. She's the most grounded person he's been with since, well, in a long time. And so, with Jack's quiet but powerful commitment, the wheels began to turn in Genoa City once more. Back at the Abbott mansion, Kyle Abbott was struggling with the weight of his own choices. The guilt had been gnawing at him since the moment Claire decided to move in. He knew he couldn't allow her to find out from someone else what had happened in Nice. It had been a risky game, one part manipulation, one part temptation, all of it tangled in unresolved history with Audra Charles. Michael Mealer's performance as Kyle reflected the perfect storm of panic, guilt, and vulnerability as he rehearsed how to tell Claire the truth without destroying everything. Claire, for her part, was trying her best to move forward. She believed in Kyle, believed in them, but something in his eyes told her there was more to the story. And there was. Kyle finally sat Claire down one quiet evening by the fire and told her the truth, at least, his version of it. He confessed that he had met up with Audra in Nice while on a business trip. He admitted there had been a plan, hatched partially by Victor, to use Audra's seductive influence to undermine Claire's loyalty. Kyle, however, claimed that he had seen through the plan from the beginning, that he had played along just long enough to gather intel, and that nothing actually happened. It was all an act, he told Claire. I never touched her. I was just pretending to be interested so I could stay close to what Victor was doing. Claire's eyes filled with tears, not because she didn't believe him, but because she knew how hard this confession must have been. She appreciated his honesty, even if part of her doubted how clean the line between pretend and temptation had really been. But in that moment, Claire made a choice to believe in their future rather than dwell on the past. But Kyle's confession wasn't without consequence. Claire confronted Audra the next day. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was final. You knew what Victor was trying to do, Claire said coolly. You participated. You don't get to claim friendship or loyalty anymore. Audra, ever the composed manipulator, smiled slightly and said, I only did what I thought was best for everyone. Especially Kyle. But Claire wasn't having it. The trust was broken, and unlike Kyle, Claire wasn't interested in nuanced justification. Audra Charles had made her bed. And as Wednesday's Y&R spoilers confirm, Audra's fall from grace was swift. Victor Newman, disappointed and annoyed by how the plan had backfired, called Audra into his office at Newman Media. She arrived, confident that her charm and strategic intellect would carry her through as it always had. But this time, Victor was ice cold. You've failed me, he said simply. Claire is gone. The plan is over. We're done here. Audra tried to protest, tried to explain that the seeds had been planted, that Claire's trust in Kyle would inevitably crumble. But Victor wasn't listening. His patience was exhausted. He'd backed Audra too many times, given her too much leash, and she had brought him nothing but scandal and setbacks. You're no longer employed by Newman Media, he declared. Audra's eyes widened in shock. You can't do that, she hissed. Watch me, Victor growled. And with that, Audra's carefully constructed empire crumbled beneath her designer heels. She left the office in a daze, unsure of what to do next. The ripple effects were immediate. Nate Hastings, who had grown increasingly suspicious of Audra's behavior, now had his instincts confirmed. The seduction game hadn't just been about Kyle, it had been a power play, one that might have included Victor's blessing. Nate confronted Audra at the Grand Phoenix, demanding to know the truth. Was any of it real? He asked, his voice low and strained. Audra looked away. You were convenient, she admitted. You were never supposed to be permanent. It was the final nail in the coffin. Nate walked away, leaving Audra to drown in the consequences of her ambition. Meanwhile, Victoria Newman found herself standing at a crossroads. She had watched Claire spiral, and as a mother, every instinct screamed at her to intervene, to protect. But she also knew Claire was growing up, forging her own path, and Victoria had to walk the delicate line between support and control. Her father had betrayed her trust yet again, using their family like chess pieces in a power game. But Claire wasn't just a daughter, she was a symbol of redemption for Victoria, a second chance at maternal grace. The betrayal hit deeper than usual. Victoria met with Victor in private and didn't hold back. You destroyed whatever little trust Claire had in this family, she said coldly. Victor remained unmoved. She needs to learn the truth about people, he muttered. She needed to know Kyle can't be trusted. Victoria shook her head. You don't get to decide that. Not anymore. The divide between father and daughter widened yet again, but this time, Victoria was preparing for war. She reached out to Jack in secret, proposing an alliance to protect their children from the toxic legacy of Victor's control. Jack, ever the reluctant ally, agreed. Back at the Abbott house, Jack finally sat down with Kyle, who had been spiraling quietly since Claire's confrontation with Audra. Jack didn't scold. He didn't lecture. Instead, he told Kyle that Nikki had come to him and asked for help. Claire needs us, Jack said simply. Not just to support her, but to show her she belongs. You belong too. It was the approval Kyle had long sought not just from his father, but from himself. With Claire by his side, with Nikki's blessing and Jack's support, Kyle felt hope for the first time in weeks. But Genoa City was never without new storms on the horizon. Audra, pushed to the margins, wasn't going down without a fight. She began plotting her next move, one that would strike at both Newman and Abbott alike. Her loyalty may have crumbled, but her cunning remained. And someone unexpected was watching from the shadows. Tucker McCall, long silent, was taking notes. And he liked what he saw in Audra's desperation. In a city where alliances shifted like sand and betrayal was currency, Audra Charles was about to become more dangerous than ever. As Genoa City reeled from the shockwaves caused by Victor's sudden dismissal of Audra Charles and Kyle's quiet confession to Claire, a tense calm settled over the Abbott household. Jack Abbott, reflective and emotionally stirred by Nikki's unusual request, found himself contemplating the larger web in which their children were entangled. Jack had lived a long life marked by scandal, rivalry, and redemption, but there was something deeply personal about this moment. Watching Kyle struggle with the burden of truth and seeing Claire, this strong, damaged, resilient young woman, try to piece together a future from the ruins Victor left behind, Jack realized just how much was at stake. Nikki's favor hadn't been simply about helping Claire. It was about breaking a cycle. It was about giving the next generation a chance to live free from the manipulations of men like Victor and the grudges of men like himself. And so Jack did more than just give his blessing, he acted. He called a press conference under the guise of announcing a new Jabot partnership, but the real message came when he introduced Claire Grace Newman publicly as someone who represents the future of this city. His voice carried weight, his words echoed through the lobby of the GCAC, and reporters took note. The gesture wasn't lost on Victor. At Newman Enterprises, Victor Newman watched the footage with narrowed eyes and tight lips. So, Jack wants a war, he muttered. Adam Newman, who had stopped by for a quiet update, overheard the comment and raised an eyebrow. Maybe he just wants his son to have a life you never gave yours, Adam suggested dryly. Victor ignored him. Meanwhile, Claire was still absorbing everything Kyle had told her. Though she appreciated his honesty, the knowledge that he had come so close to betraying her with Audra left her with an internal ache she couldn't quite ignore. She found herself walking alone through Chancellor Park, trying to find the clarity that had eluded her since her blow-up with Victor. There, she ran into Summer Newman. The encounter could have gone either way. Claire had once been a pariah in Summer's eyes, and there was no denying the history between Summer and Kyle, but what transpired was unexpectedly sincere. He loves you, Summer said softly. He didn't look at me like that even when we were happy. Whatever happened in Nice, it doesn't matter as much as what he's doing now. Just don't let it destroy you. Claire, stunned by Summer's maturity and grace, nodded wordlessly. The two women shared a brief, silent acknowledgement of shared pain and walked separate ways, but something had shifted. Claire was starting to realize she had more allies than she thought. Over at the Grand Phoenix, Audra Charles was unraveling beneath the surface. Her polished exterior remained, but behind closed doors, she paced like a lion in a cage. Victor's dismissal had come as both a shock and a betrayal. She had given everything to Newman Media, her loyalty, her cunning, her body, and her secrets. And now she had nothing to show for it. No job. No Kyle. No allies. Nate had walked away. Claire had cut her off. Even Tucker McCall hadn't returned her calls. But Audra was a survivor. She always had been. And if she couldn't work within the system, she would burn it down and rebuild it on her own terms. She began making subtle moves, calling in favors, reaching out to influencers and digital media partners she'd once helped while under the Newman umbrella. She quietly purchased a dormant media company under a shell LLC, using offshore accounts to conceal her involvement. She was determined to rise again, and this time, no one would be pulling her strings. But while she plotted, she remained haunted by a single lingering truth. She had underestimated Claire. What was supposed to be a brief, emotional manipulation to split her from Kyle had turned into a full-blown reckoning. Audra hadn't realized how far Claire had come from the haunted girl who had once been strapped to a hospital bed. She was a Newman. And now, she had the Abbott legacy behind her, too. Elsewhere, Victoria Newman continued to simmer. She was caught in a war between her father and her daughter, and every choice seemed to cost her something precious. Victor had always demanded loyalty, but this time, the price was too high. Claire needed her now more than ever. Victoria made the bold choice to show up at the Abbott mansion unannounced, wanting to speak directly to Kyle and Jack. When Kyle opened the door and saw her standing there, tension flashed across his face. "If you're here to blame me," he began, but Victoria held up her hand. "No. I'm here to protect my daughter," she said. "And that includes making peace with you, Kyle." Over coffee in the sunlit Abbott kitchen, Victoria laid her cards on the table. She admitted that while she didn't fully trust Kyle, she saw how much he meant to Claire. And she didn't want to repeat the mistakes Victor had made. "She's happier with you than I've ever seen her," Victoria admitted. "But if you ever lie to her again, if you ever hurt her," Kyle nodded, "you won't have to worry. I'll destroy myself before I destroy her." Jack, listening nearby, was visibly moved. For a brief moment, there was peace between the families. However, across town, another storm was building. Nate Hastings was facing fallout of his own. Though he had cut ties with Audra, whispers about his own involvement with Victor's plans were beginning to surface. Elena, who had quietly returned to Genoa City, confronted him at Crimson Lights. "I thought you left that world behind," she said, her voice tinged with disappointment. Nate didn't deny anything. He simply stared into his coffee, the weight of his ambition pressing down on him. "I wanted to believe I could be different," he confessed. "But the truth is, I'm not sure I even know who I am without the power." Elena looked at him sadly. "Then maybe it's time you figure it out before there's nothing left of the man I used to love." At Newman Enterprises, Victor was already planning his next move. The loss of Claire and the unraveling of his scheme with Audra had been a setback, but he was not a man who stayed down long. He called in his most loyal asset, Adam. "It's time we take a new approach," he said. Adam, skeptical but intrigued, listened as Victor laid out a plan to acquire several media outlets, perhaps the very same ones Audra had her eye on. Victor wasn't just trying to rebuild his empire. He wanted to box Audra out permanently. But Adam wasn't sure this was the right direction. "Maybe it's time we stop trying to control everything," he said. Victor simply smirked. "Control is the only thing that keeps the wolves at bay." Back at the Chancellor estate, Chancellor found himself pulled into the fray after receiving a confidential tip. Someone had been moving large sums of money through shell companies tied to former Newman Media associates. Intrigued, he began investigating and soon found a paper trail that led him straight to Audra's new venture. While he had no personal vendetta, Chance knew corruption when he saw it. He flagged the information for the SEC and quietly reached out to Devon Hamilton, warning him to stay clear of Audra's new company. Devon, still burned by past alliances, appreciated the heads-up. In the midst of this chaos, Jack and Nikki met once more. This time, it was a quiet evening at the Abbott cabin. They reflected on how far they'd come and how much had changed. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Nikki asked. "Backing them, Claire and Kyle." Jack looked at her with that familiar softness in his eyes. "I think it's the first time we've done something just for them. Not for revenge. Not for legacy. Just love." Nikki smiled, a rare moment of peace softening her features. But neither of them knew that the peace would be short-lived. Because at that very moment, Audra Charles received a message. It was from Tucker McCall. It read only, "Let's talk." And in that simple message was the promise of resurgence, of chaos, and of vengeance. Because if Audra was going down, she was going to take Kyle, Claire, and the entire Newman Abbott alliance with her.